Good evening and welcome to the Fairfield City School District Board of Education meeting for August 18th, 2022. Mrs. Lamb, will you call the roll?
Mr. Begley.
Here.
Ms. Birding. Here. Mr. Clark.
Present.
Mrs. Gardner. Here. Mrs. Shorter. Here.
Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Birding, will you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Birding. Let's move forward with presentations and resolutions. Mr. Smith.
Yes, Mr. Begley, members of the board, we do have one presentation scheduled this evening. If you recall, back in July, I believe it was, the board had some discussions about the presentations that they would like to see throughout the 22-23 school year. One of those was a transportation update, and I remember some discussion about, we get asked questions about bus stops, how are they decided, those types of things. So this evening, we're excited to have Mr. Westerbeck, our transportation director, and Ms. Flick, our assistant director, join us. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. As Mr. Smith mentioned, we've been working on a presentation for this evening's board meeting. So with that said, all three of us are going to have a part in this presentation, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Westerbeck to get started.
Good evening. I assume I'm on. We're excited to be here and glad to hear of the interest. As you can see, as we start off with our first slide here, our current staffing in transportation is we currently have 61 full-time bus drivers, 10 chauffeurs, 10 educational assistants, and 5 office staff. That office staff also includes the newly hired safety coordinator trainer. That's been a great addition to the office, and over time, that's going to be a super thing to have. One of the big questions we get all the time, and we hear is, what are the requirements to be a bus driver? What's it take to be here? So that's guidelines are set up through the state. Requirements, you have to be 21 years of age or older with at least 2 years of driving experience. You have to have a clean background check. Now, when we say a clean driving record, we're talking less than 6 points on your record. Different than what the requirements are for others, that's 12. We have to have less than 6 in order for our drivers to even start. So when we say clean, if we would start you with 2 and you happen to catch a 4-point violation, you can no longer drive for us. Also along the line, you have to pass a background check, which is a BCI and FBI check, fingerprint check, that all school employees have to pass. We have to go along and complete a written test in order to get your temporary permits for CDL training. And then after you take that written test for the state, you'll get a same as the old, when you're 15, 16 years old, you have a temporary pass, and then we move you into it with one of our behind-the-wheel trainers and start the training. Along with that, after we get you into that process, there's a T8 physical and a pre-employment drug screen that goes along with that. That physical is required every year, and the pre-employment drug screen, of course, at the start of it. Later on down the road, you're also subject to random drug testing. Included in this training that we also have what's called a pre-service class, which is the state of Ohio pre-service. It's a 4-day class that all the drivers would attend. And as we go through that 4-day, as they go through the 4-day class through the state, there's testing they do, and ultimately they'll come back and let us know whether or not our drivers qualify through the test. And ultimately, after going through all the CDL training, they have to pass a driving test in the school bus, which is put on by the Ohio State Highway Patrol. Now, once that occurs, then we have requirements that has to continue through the year, and we do that. But in order to remain a bus driver, as I spoke earlier, we have to do subject to random drug and alcohol testing. They pass their physical each summer. They have to maintain that driving record, again, less than 6 points. And we have a state recertification process that they go through that they have to process out every 6 years. And in that 6 years, that also includes another set of BCI and FBI checks that happens. The big question here is bus stops and routing. Now, we have a program that helps us assist with our routing. It's called Edgelog. That came up short term for educational logistics. Programs we've had for years. It's a great program. I believe a number of you will remember we discussed it years ago for routing students. It assists us in keeping the system and the students in the task. Is with this system which is a very complicated system. As you see, we have a 4-tiered district. So in that 4-tiered district, we basically in the morning time, we'll have the middle school routes. Then after the middle schools, we'll run the freshman highs for the 2nd tiers. Then we have a 3rd tiers of elementary runs and then a 4th tier of elementary runs. After we do those 4 in the morning time, drivers go home, come back for midday kindergarten, and we start the afternoon back with 4 more tiers. So it's not the old, hey, that bus driver comes to work, drives around, goes home. They're working. They're coming to work 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, going home 9:30, 10 o'clock. Then they turn back around 1:30, 2 o'clock back, and then going home 4:30, 5 o'clock in the evening. And that's if you don't have the middle school runs. Now, the other question we get asked quite a bit is bus stops. Bus stops are maintained, we keep bus stops maintained as the same place every year, and we try to keep them as a neighborhood stop. So regardless of what school you go to in the elementaries, whether it's public, non-public, we keep the stops separated out for the elementaries, and then we have this different set of stops for the high school kids. Again, we just try to stay consistent with that by keeping the walking distances to the stops for the students. Elementary students, less than 1/3 of a mile. Most of our elementary students are less than 1/4. And then the upper level, grade level students, less than 1/2 mile. And the law allows us to route all up 1/2 mile. We try to keep the little guys closer around if possible. Along with setting the stops, we try to avoid any turnarounds in the neighborhood. We do that as much as possible, so we won't route down cul-de-sacs if at all possible, or send you down to a dead-end location where we're forcing the bus to turn around. That has to happen. Another question about the number of buses at each school. It's normally, if we're looking at how we're going to put kids and how many kids we're going to do, we'll take the number of buses, a quick determination of stools, divide that out by the number of students per bus, and try to keep it limited to 2 to a seat. Sometimes we're forced to put a 3 to seat at the younger levels, 2 to the seat at the upper levels. And then when we're taking our numbers and putting them together, we assume 90% ridership of the buses. So whatever we put in there, most of the time we find that 10% of what we route there on those buses don't normally show up at one time or another. Consideration of time when putting these individual routes into routes. With the Edgelog program, which has been a great help to us, as being the 4-tier system, we're really, really tight and complicated in the 2nd and the 3rd tier. They're so tight together that it creates a lot of additional routing to try to keep the stops together and try to make the schools at the next time frame. And one of the reasons, the primary reason we have to change a bus stop would be road hazards. You know, things come up along the way where we've had a neighborhood stop up, and for whatever reason that is no longer safe, we'll move it and have to change it for the road hazard. Sorry, I feel like I'm flying through this. The next part of it is going to turn it over to Jeanette for the safety and expectations.
Okay. safety and expectations on the bus. First item, the designated place of safety. So state law requires that the drivers assign a designated place of safety at each bus stop. And then typically you'll have one on each side of that road. So you want to place the students on their resident side of the road to drop them off. And the main goal of the place of safety is to, as much as possible, reduce the potential for a student being hit by the bus. It's not so much for car traffic, it's that a lot of students are hit by their own bus. So in the mornings, we want the students to be in their places of safety prior to the bus's approach. We tell them prior to the scheduled bus stop time, you should be in your place of safety. And this is so that as that driver's approaching the stop, she knows she has 12 students, she can see 5, she can see 7, she knows that no one's running from an unpredicted place. And she can safely pull up to that stop and load her students. And then by the same token, in the evening, when she's dropping them off, they're directed and they have proper procedures and safety procedures to do so. They go to their places of safety and they are taught to stay there until the bus departs. And the drivers are to count their students twice. So 7, 5, 7, 5. They know they're all safely 20 steps away so that they're far enough away they cannot get in danger of the bus. And our typical practice is to teach the students, do not depart your safety zone till you see the taillights of the bus, which keeps them safe. Expectations of student on the bus are pretty simple, same as in the classroom. There's board policy, JFCC. R1 refers to the rules, and then R2 refers to the discipline procedure if you break those rules. Our referral process starts day 1, so the drivers day 1 should be teaching the students their expectations on behavior and, more importantly, their expectations and their safety procedures as they depart, board the bus, and while they're on the bus. We want the drivers to, as much as possible, handle discipline on the bus. So for the most part, a student standing up, it's a warning. It's explain why that's unsafe. So for the most part, 1 or 2 times, you should be able to convince a student to sit down. If they cannot, you may go to moving seats. You can't sit with your friends anymore. You gotta sit up here where I can keep a better eye on you. And if it just cannot be handled on the bus, that's when we go to an actual discipline referral. Discipline referrals would be filled out by the bus driver, turned into the administrator at the school or his designee, and then that person would actually investigate the problem and, if warranted, issue a consequence. Next slide is just kind of facts from our last year, 21-22. So 1 million miles driven by Fairfield City school buses. That's a lot of miles. We had 61 regular education routes, 10 special needs routes, 9,600 students routed, and then 6,200 actual riders. That would be the number from the T1 count first week of October. We service 15 public schools. That comes into play a lot with our routing because the public schools are not always on our tiers. There are lots of times between and they mess it up a little bit. Provided service approximately 262 days, which may seem like a lot since the school year is 178, but we have weekend field trips, sometimes both Saturday and Sunday, and summer school lasted 6 weeks, and latchkey for summer is all summer. It's just a couple days a week, but it's all summer long. Last year, we in an effort to improve our department, we did surveys with building administrators throughout the district and with our own staff, drivers, and aides to try to get an idea where we could improve. We've used that to develop quite a few things we're doing this year, the feedback from that. We also had an OSBA audit performed on our department. One of the big things from the feedback from him was that we are in the process of updating our driver handbooks and creating an office processes and procedure handbook, which we've really never had since I've been there. So that is going to be good. And then the other big thing last year that was that we did get authorized to have paid training for the trainees. Bill went over the process, and I don't know if he said it, it is typically 4 to 6 weeks from the time a applicant applies to the time we can get them tested and ready to drive. And before, without paid training, that's 4 to 6 weeks that just no pay, and there are some expenses incurred during that. So it's a big deal, and it's helped with the last few trainees that I've had that we've been able to. It's not a great big bunch of pay, but it does reimburse them for what they're spending and give them a little income while they're getting through that training process. I will turn it over to our home run hitter, Lance.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Thanks.
So I asked to speak, to take this slide on behalf of the team to highlight a few items. One of the things was that throughout the year last year, I attended the AP meetings at FAT that occur about once a month to engage with them. That we typically they are the administrators that deal with a lot of the transportation discipline, et cetera. So I wanted to engage with them to get feedback directly from them. And from that, later in the year, we had a small committee with Aisha Lambert, Jay Bauer, and Cassandra Delaney that we all met together, kind of outlined some ideas that we had to better improve our customer service and things that we could do this year, but kind of bounce it off them to make sure that we were answering the questions and filling in the gaps of what the buildings perceived. So as we start this 22-23 school year, again, I want to highlight the safety coordinator / trainer. Her name is Angie Kimball. She was a third-year driver for us who retired, and we were able to hire. She also has 15 years of driver training experience, so she was like perfect for the role, and we're very excited about her working with us. Listed below are a few of the areas of concentration for her role that we've identified, and we will continue to meet and identify as we grow the role. In your packet, I also provided you an updated trifold. This is something that we just worked on that did exist, but we tried to update it specifically for the BASH. We had this at the BASH as well as having a bus so that parents and students could get on a bus or ask some questions. And in addition to that, our drivers that attended the open houses that day had these to be able to hand out because we were trying to give a takeaway to parents that may answer some questions they may have, but also provide some information such as the phone number and the address of transportation just in case. August 10th to us was a big day. That was a non-contracted day for the drivers, but on that day we had a kickoff meeting and a grill out for them, for all drivers who wanted to attend. I actually put the picture of our folks there at the start of the training. So we started, and Mr. Smith actually attended and addressed the team, which is a big deal. They love hearing from Billy. We had de-escalation training, which was provided by Butler County ESC. Dave Bell, right? He did a great job. And again, I highlight that picture because we had 65 people sign up, wasn't that correct?
Yeah.
That came that morning. So we were estimating, we didn't actually know how many people would come. So obviously food entices, but we were very pleased with 65 people who signed up for that, the trainings. And then after that, PBIS training, which was conducted by Mr. Crapo and Ms. Gilbert, with the goal of trying to mirror the vocabulary of the schools in their approach. So now our goal is to have the bus drivers using the same vocabulary and steps in managing the children on their bus as they experience in the schools. So if the expectation is we're extending their behavior from the classroom into the bus, then we need to model the way of the buildings and their vocabulary as well. And so far, it's been pretty popular. In addition to that, the last thing I wanted to highlight was these get to know your bus driver sheets that we handed you. So we gave these sheets, this was the actual size, to give you an idea what the full sheet. To each driver, there was 3 different ones, so they had different questions that they could fill out. So the goal with this was, first of all, hello, my name is, we asked the drivers to put what they would like to be referred to as, like Mr. Lance, Mr. Perry, Lance, whatever it may be. so that the students would know how they want to be addressed. But then the idea of the favorite things was trying to create a way for the students and the drivers to be able to engage and connect with the kids. We laminated these, then we put magnets on the back, and the place that we identified on the bus that was the best placement was as you enter the bus, come onto the bus, directly above their head was the best place to put it for the kids to see it, but it not to be in the way, because we also have to make sure we're not violating any laws of blocking vision and all that fun stuff. But we were quite pleased with the driver's enthusiasms about this. We didn't know how it was going to land, and they actually did a lot of decorating. Some of their answers, excuse me, that they provided were actually pretty funny. One driver in particular put his name as bus driver. And I asked Jeanette, I was like, do we need to be concerned with this? And with that driver in particular, they're like, no, it's perfect. It's perfect. It fits right into their personality. So we were very pleased that they took ownership of it. And so our goal is throughout the year, because we met many, many times throughout the year last year, and our goal is this year is to continue that, to continue to engage with the drivers in the buildings, to make sure that the progress that we're looking to make, that we're revisiting those things and making sure that we are seeing the results that are desired. So I considered August 10th to be a really, really important day, and things are going to be different. And the drivers were very excited about. We grilled out for them, and they were very appreciative, and it was a good day all the way around. So with that said, I will switch to questions, and for this part, I will allow the two experts to answer. Questions?
Comments, the part about the mirrored vocab, I think that's really cool. That you're using that same language and both the kids don't get confused, and it's rhetorical, so that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then Ms. Flick, you said there's more accidents with the kids in the school buses?
Yeah, I said, when I was trained 1,000 years ago, Fred Ennis told us that's kind of when safety places was first starting, and he used to report that more students, of the number of students that are hit going to or from the bus stop, more are hit by their own school bus than are hit by other cars. I don't know if that number's still correct, so I didn't say that all the way.
Yeah.
But it was a very big
Still
factor,
is,
and
yeah.
that's why the place of safety came about.
Yeah, I would never have thought that, so
Right.
thank you.
Yeah.
And then I assume the answer is this, but you had like 9,600 students routed and 6,200 riding, so that means 3,400 are mom and dad's taking them? Or walking?
Well, what happens there is, I'm sorry,
No,
Yeah.
I was.
what happens there is we actually route the students at the beginning of the year. So for the start of the school year, we would have routed that many students, but then we do what's called a T1 count for state reporting the first week of October. So 5 days in October, we count the students riding the bus. We're only allowed to count that week. So if the students are doing extra in the morning, if the students are doing extracurriculars, or maybe they don't ride in the morning and they ride in the afternoon, we can only take credit for their count. And that's where that number came from, is that 6,500 was the actual T1 count. So at any given time of those kids that we routed, you get a couple thousand of them in one set of activities. 3 months later, we may see the other group that we routed. So they're all encompassed in the buses there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Westerbeck, in the beginning, you mentioned, and there was some distractions, you mentioned some of the testing and the things they have to do. Do we cover that? Do we kind of split the bill, or is that on the app?
Some of it's on the applicant, some of it's on us. We kind of split, we pick up the physical. There's certain things that we do pick up, and then there's certain things that they pick up. But that's the reason for the paid training. The paid training's made a big difference because they now can take this, they have some income coming in to cover some of the expenses.
Sure, I think that was great, you mentioned that as well, and it really led into what Mr. Perry said about this, in a tight labor market, some of these value-added features, showing our appreciation and the pay as they're learning. I don't know if other districts are doing that, but maybe that makes us a more attractive place to come drive a bus. And that's great. Thank you very much.
And we're working on some other other things, we still coming in the process.
Sure.
According to what I just Googled here, the price is anywhere between $2,500 and $4,500. Is that accurate as for CDL training? Is that accurate?
Yes, if you're doing out of a private contractor to get your training, yes, it runs anywhere from $25,000 to actually $5,000 to get your license. So the training they receive from us is they're getting a bargain there. Like I said, it does take them 4 to 6 weeks to get through the process because we're limited to the amount of time we can train them. We just can't take them out and run and do it. We're allowed to do like 2.5 hours in the morning, 2.5 hour sessions, or 2 3/4 hours, I believe, get the actual time frame. And then they have to practice it, pass it, and then have to have them ready for the state testing. Because the patrol is very, very strict on what happens.
The process starts out with, we pull a driving record, we pay for that. They go in for fingerprints, they pay for that, that's $47. They have to go get their temps, that's around $30. The class that they go to, we pay for. The physical and the drug screen, we pay for. But they have to pay for their state test, which is now running around $115. And then when they pass the test, they have to pay for a new license. So there are like 4 items that they pay for, and then we really pay for the rest. And probably the biggest expense would be the training, which we have in-house trainers. So it makes it more reasonable for us than sending out.
And they have to renew it every 5 years? Or
6.
6.
Mhm.
Thank you. You guys did a great job. Thank you so much.
Thanks for all you do.
Would it be advantageous for us to pay for all of that?
I'm sure it would be to the trainee.
If they stay 90 days, then we'll reimburse you or something like that.
I think that would be a great idea, yeah. Because it's not, like you heard, it's just those 4 expenses, it's not a ton.
Yeah.
So, yeah, qualifying it with some time work would not be a terrible idea. Yeah. I don't know how Nancy felt.
She said we'll table that for now.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.